Hello and welcome to Shy Talk. This is now a European history podcast. Today we'll talk about the Dutch or some other stuff. This is episode 2 of 4, possibly 5. Ostensibly this whole thing is supposed to be about the Battle of the Boyne in 1690. So by the end of this episode we should be almost ready to talk about that. I was going to ask you to recap the last episode, but for the interest of...
That would be highly unfair.
Yes. So, I think so far we figured Henry VIII wants to bang Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn says, not unless we're married. You could see it as a fairly romantic move. He changes the religion of his country and declares himself the mouthpiece of God. And England becomes a Protestant nation. Then some stuff happens over the next 100 years. People are freaked out about Catholics. There's the Popish plot where Titus starts pointing fingers at everybody. Lots of people get killed. Richard Talbot goes into exile. His brother Peter Talbot, the Archbishop of Dublin, gets executed. But then Charles II dies after a deathbed conversion to Catholicism, confirming everybody's fears all along that he was a secret Catholic. His brother James II, who's openly Catholic, gets the throne. And now that's it. That's the scene.
Okay, scene set. You haven't said whether it's interior or exterior yet, Kev. So
exterior, London, 1660, I think. I don't know.
And the time of day. Sorry, I'm in the script writing mode now. Everything. That's how I view the world.
8 a.m.
Okay.
All right. James II, fresh on the throne. So initially, James has to deal with a few rebellions, but he puts them down pretty quickly, and ultimately, everything's grand. Despite the fact that he was a Catholic, he's pretty popular across the three kingdoms of Ireland, Scotland and England, mostly because people don't want another civil war, so they're just happy to put up with him.
Okay. Do you think it's kind of like when they let Pierce Brosnan be James Bond? They're like, just give it to the Irish guy. It'll stop everyone from complaining that it's not theirs. Like, it's not Connery or Moore. It's not England versus Scotland or Wales anymore. Just give it to the Irish guy. Just make no one happy.
Yeah, exactly. So...
keep everyone content by making no one happy.
Yeah, everyone was willing to put up with a lot of bullshit because they just been through a civil war. So, but he immediately starts rocking the boat. Well,
don't rock the boat, baby.
He loves his whole thing is that he's very tolerant towards other religions, probably because he's Catholic. I don't know if it's out of the goodness of his heart or he just wants people to stop throwing stuff at him.
Ah, yes, Catholicism, famous for being open to other religions.
Yeah, but so he wants to avoid. So as I say, he puts down like 2 rebellions early enough to avoid any future rebellions. He disbands the Protestant militia. I read an interesting thing that apparently, like, the origins of the Second Amendment to bear arms comes from like this whole thing, because as soon as he got into power, he started like disbanding Protestant militia groups. He's like, you don't need guns. We'll look after you. Give us the guns. And then that doesn't go so well for them later on. But yeah, he takes guns off the Protestant militia. He starts putting Catholics into high-ranking positions in the military. He frees 1,000 religious prisoners in his first couple of months. Just lets them loose. He invites over an ambassador from the Vatican, who's like the first ambassador since Henry VIII's daughter, so like the first ambassador in 100 years. He publishes some papers that his brother Charles had written. Charles had written these papers arguing that Catholicism was better than Protestantism, and James found them and then published them and asked the church to fight him. And they say they decline out of like respect for Charles, but also because they're cowards.
Is it the equivalent back then of like your brother finding your diary or your journal and then reading it out in front of all your friends at school? Today, Catholicism gave me a look from across the canteen. My heart was aflutter.
So in 1685, James makes his old friend lion fighting Dick Talbot, who is fresh back into Ireland from exile. He makes him the Earl of Tyrconnell, like the Baron of Donegal, and he recalls James Butler, your old friend James Butler. He brings him back to England because I think he's an old man. I think he dies like 2 years after this. But he had been the commander-in-chief in the Irish army, so he calls him back. He gives Talbot the job. So now Talbot's in charge of the military in Ireland. And the Lord Deputy of Ireland was Henry Hyde, who was a Protestant, and also James's brother-in-law. but he found that Talbot was like undermining him at every turn. He kept contradicting his requests, so Hyde complained to his brother James. So James stepped in and got rid of Hyde as well, and then just give Talbot his job. So now Talbot is the Lord Deputy of Ireland and the chief military man. He's basically just running the show.
Wait, so he stepped in to say this lad's been a dick, so then they got rid of the guy who complained?
Yeah, well the guy who complained was the king's brother-in-law. So he's like, I'll put a stop to this. I've got the king's ear. And he complained that like the other guy was making a show of him. And he's like, well, why doesn't he just do your job then? And he got rid of him.
Okay, that's what. Yeah, that's never reference the fact that someone else is doing your work for you.
No,
this isn't right. I'm not being taken seriously. Everyone keeps saying I'm not fit for my purpose. I shouldn't even be in this position. What's going on, King? I'm going to lend my ear to everybody else for a second.
So now Talbot's pretty much running Ireland for James. He follows James' lead. He disbands the Protestant militia in Ireland as well. He starts putting a load of Catholic people in high positions in the army. He replaced a lot of the senior Protestant officials with Catholics. He tries to put a Catholic provost into Trinity, which causes a big fuss.
Provost?
I don't know, some like the head of the college.
So because you said that, and like the listeners won't know what that is.
No, and I looked it up and I forgot. But apparently these seem to be, so James tried to do it I think in Oxford, and Talbot tried to do it in Ireland, and they seem to be two of the biggest sticking points. I don't know why. I guess they just really didn't want Catholics to have an education.
Okay.
The rest of the stuff that we were annoyed about, but those, like, they're like, they can be in the military, they can be in politics, but they can't read a book.
I mean, look, it makes sense.
Yes,
I don't agree with it. Not from I don't think that's what they should have done. But I mean, if you're trying to keep a country under your oppressive thumb, then yeah, that'd be the way. Don't be giving them books to get them learning smarts.
Yeah. So he's replacing all the local sheriffs, a lot of the aldermen. So this leads to like a flight of the Protestant industrial class.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the earls.
No. Well, they took a note from the earls. A lot of highly trained Protestant military men also left. A lot of them fled to the continent. A lot of them went to Holland, which will become relevant in about 10 minutes. Chief Justice Keating wrote to James II in 1689, complaining that in 18 months, Talbot had reduced Ireland from a place of briskest trade and the best paid rents in Christendom to ruin and desolation. So James was like laying the groundwork to use Ireland as a Catholic refuge in case anything happened to him, and Talbot was just happy to try and restore the Catholic gentry back to where it was. So they were a good pair.
He was hoping for some gentrification.
Exactly. And Talbot was also close to the French court because he'd been in exile there. He became friendly with Louis and the boys, and apparently there was some conversation between, like, the French court dispatched a guy to talk to Talbot about the possibility of, if anything happened to James, military invasion of Ireland and turning Ireland into a Catholic nation with Talbot as its king. Yeah.
He's rising through the ranks.
He's pretty much, depending on what source I read, they either described him as like a swashbuckling, charming son of a gun rogue or an ugly, low-down, dirty scumbag. But he spent quite a bit of his life in exile. He's been in exile 2 or 3 times now. And in the space of a couple of years, he's gone from some guy on the run to running Ireland and also getting tapped in the shoulder for, like, if anything goes down, how would you like to be the French King of Ireland?
I've realised I've never been in exile.
You're in exile now.
I don't think, no. Well, what's the technical definition of it?
You've been kicked out of bars. It's basically that.
Okay.
Or it's sort of like when you get cancelled, I think. You make a phony apology and then you lay low for a couple of months and then you Louis C.K. your way back with a special.
I wouldn't know anything about it. Nothing about it, Kev. I'm yet to be cancelled, shouldn't say yet to be Me Too.
No.
That's, shouldn't even say yet to be cancelled. Neither of those things are going to happen to me because there's no proof.
I know how to wipe a hard drive. So, in April 1687, James reissues the Declaration of Indulgence that his brother had released, which suspends the penal laws.
Is it called the Declaration of Indulgence?
It is, yeah, which is like, it makes it sound like a marketing campaign for ice cream or something.
I, from this point onwards, declare that I will be a gluttonous bastard. I am going to eat cream, chocolate, cheese, just cakes, pints of ale. I want gout by the time I'm 30.
If this just isn't the declaration of indulgence, pass me another chicken wing. But so he stops the penal laws, which means you can be a Catholic again. You can also be a Jew. You can be a Muslim. It's happy days for about 2 months. He did a little tour around trying to drum up support. He said, "Suppose there should be a law made that all black men should be imprisoned. It would be unreasonable, and we had as little reason to quarrel with other men for being of different religious opinions as for being of different complexions."
So then they turned around and said, that idea you had about imprisoning all black men.
Is that a thing we can do? Is that on the cards? That again?
Yeah, that's... So, I can imagine that didn't go down too well.
I don't, so again, his big mission, he wants to repeal the test and penal laws completely so that there's religious freedom. I don't know if it is just because he is a Catholic, but he's exempt from all these rules by divine right because he's king. So you get a weird situation where he is openly Catholic and is king of the country, but no other Catholic in the country can have any position of power.
That is weird. It seems like they needed to shore up that the documentation there before he got in charge. I bet after him that didn't happen again.
Well, yeah, they got onto that pretty quickly. I think they didn't write it in because they never thought it would. No, I don't know, because it had happened. I don't know. I guess they thought they'd never let it happen again, but this one kind of snuck up on them. Okay. So he's able to suspend the laws, but Parliament won't let him get rid of them altogether. Every time he tries, they disagree with him. He dissolves Parliament. The whole thing goes round again. So he starts trying to stack the Parliament with supporters so that he can get rid of the laws legally. But in 1688, he causes more issues by increasing his standing army, which apparently wasn't a done thing during peacetime. Although I don't have the number here. It wasn't that big of an army, but the fact that he has an army at all when there's no war going on kind of freaks people out. That's made worse by the fact that he takes 3,000 soldiers over from Ireland, from Talbot. So now, I think it was maybe 30,000 men. So now, a substantial amount of your army are...
That's a good-sized army.
Yeah, but 3,000 of those are Catholic paddies.
So you're saying that they really have 70,000 men?
Exactly. But people are concerned. And since no one paid attention to him the first time he brought in the Declaration of Indulgence, he does it again that following year in April. But this time, he makes all the Anglican ministers read it out at Mass. But the Archbishop of Canterbury and several other major bishops petitioned the king to reverse the indulgence. He sees that as sedition and he arrests them. So they're put on trial in June of 1688 and there's riots in the streets. They were acquitted later on that month, but the damage is already done, and then the fact that he acquitted them makes James look like a bitch.
Fair. Not agreeing, just saying, in the eyes of the public, I can see it.
Yeah, because he did a half measure.
People would rather you be steadfast in your beliefs and 100% wrong than to take a half measure and kind of sit on a fence in between, because then you just get hit from both sides.
It's a risky move to take though when there's riots in the streets and you're I'm a man of my conviction. These bishops are going down. I don't think the rioters would be God damn it, I hate him, but damn do I respect him. Put down your pitchforks, boys. He's okay.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? He did the other option where he arrested them and then acquitted them. So people figure he's not for real. And the final nail in his coffin is also in June. He gave birth to a Catholic son. More accurately, his wife gave birth to a Catholic son. But anyway, there's now James Francis Edwards.
That would have been pretty impressive, and that would have been probably its own episode.
Probably, yeah. They probably would have liked that just about as much if he had given birth to it. So the Parliament figured James was 52 at the time. He's married to Mary. She's much younger, but they hadn't had a child. So they figured, let's just put up with his nonsense. We'll just keep blocking everything he tries to put through Parliament. He'll be dead soon, and then we'll get back to business.
He's 52. It's the 1600s. He could only have 2 months left to live. How much longer could he really push this?
Yeah.
He's going to stub his toe on a table pretty soon, and then, that should be, from that point onwards, he's got probably minutes.
Yeah, the boys just kept leaving, knee-high boxes around, hoping he'd, hey, James, could you come over here a minute? He was very susceptible to, like, if someone crouched down behind him and got pushed
And just
into a pool, he's dead. That's his assassination.
Gone. Although I feel like I've never seen that done over like a cliff or a tall building. That would be
I feel with a cliff or a tall building, you don't really need the person behind them.
You do, because or else they'd have that kind of like 2 foot leeway. And you're kind of like, you'd be close to it going, I'm sure footed, I'm like a mountain goat, I'll be fine. But oh no, someone behind me, a slight obstacle.
But
don't ever go to the cliffs of Moher with me, Kev. I'm a prankster at heart.
I'll continue not to remove that from my list of things. But so now Parliament's freaked out about a Catholic dynasty. Before this, so the next in line was James's daughter from his first marriage, Mary, who, as you remember from the last episode, Jason, he'd been forced to marry off to the Protestant William of Orange.
Yes.
So they're like, Parliament was just like, put up with his nonsense, wait a couple of years, these two will be in charge, it'll be grand. Also in that same month of June, a group of British nobles called the Immortal Seven sent a letter to William of Orange.
The Immortal Seven?
The Immortal Seven. It sounds like a Quentin Tarantino film. As far as they were just a bunch of like parliamentarians.
It sounds like a band I would have been in when I was 12.
Yeah, with like an anarchy logo.
You don't understand me, Mom. You're never going to understand me. Now, can you drive me to band practice, please? And buy all of my instruments. Thank you.
So yeah, they forget. They write a letter to William of Orange, who is now the stadtholder of the Netherlands, and ask him to use military intervention to make his wife Mary the next heir to the throne. They claim that James's son is an imposter, which has no founding. I think they just say that because they want it to be true. So I don't know if they imply that he just found a child somewhere. And
I like stuff in history like that, though, when you can just lie, just say things that at the time, like, I don't like this guy anymore. Have you thought about spreading the rumor that, hey, he's not really that person? I was like, well, let's do a DNA test. They don't exist yet.
Well, that's, there's letters circulating around England at the time saying that the child was a bastard and an imposter. I don't know if it was a bastard and imposter or one or the other.
Maybe it's an imposter bastard. You're not really a bastard. You're the actual heir.
But again, like, this is within 2 weeks of the child being born. There's no foundation for it at all. But they're running wild with it. So the Immortal Seven send a letter to William. Yeah, so after the birth of James's son, James had sent Mary a letter asking her to convert to Catholicism, which William wasn't happy about. William wrote an open letter to England blasting James's Catholic leanings, so the Immortal Seven figured it'd be a safe bet. And they were right. It turns out that William and Mary had been planning an invasion for like the last 2 months, but they were waiting for someone to invite them over, so it didn't look like what it was.
So you're telling me they're vampires?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, they're needing an invitation to come in and do this.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm on board.
It is crazy how often people will wait for like a bit of paper to defend them. They're about to stage a military invasion of England, and they're like, well, if we have a letter from someone, if we get the Immortal Seven on side, then we're golden. No one can touch us. They're one of the most prolific funk groups of the time.
I kind of thought, like, not heavy metal, but what would the word be? Like experimental rock, kind of like a Mars Volta.
I was thinking that as well, but also it has this sort of egotistical name that like a 70s funk band would have, where they started off as like a grassroots funk organization, and then within about 10 years, they're so high on coke and fame, they're just the Immortal Seven.
The Brothers Ghibli and the Immortal Seven. I feel like the Immortal Seven would be like a touring band for somebody else.
Sure, and there'd be 14 of them.
So William of Orange and the Immortal Seven. I mean, what a group. The stage presence, Kevin. The stage presence.
I love it. So here's William's origin story, right? King Billy.
His origin story.
Yeah. A real slice of life sort of thing. Terry's not so chocolate William of Orange. That's all I got. So if you go up to Northern Ireland, there's murals of King Billy like all over Belfast. This is their guy. Like, he is the Protestant Jesus in terms of like the Battle of the Boyne and all these other things that are coming after this. So he was born in 1650. A couple of days before he was born, his dad dies, which means that Billy is the Prince of Orange from birth. And he grew up in the Netherlands in a time known as the Dutch Golden Age, when the place was run by a man called Johan de Witt.
A pretty sharp guy.
A pretty witty guy, pretty on the ball. So there's a long history between like the merchant Republican class that DeWitt belongs to and the orange monarchists that Billy is born into. It's basically like the royalists versus the parliament that's going on in England at the same time. I think it's the equivalent of that. So DeWitt doesn't want the Prince of Orange to have any political power, doesn't want them involved in it. He wants to like eradicate the position of stadholder. And because the Dutch fleet controlled most of the Asian trade routes and he's controlling the sea and everything's going fucking class for the Dutch boys, he can do whatever he wants. In 1670, William went to England to meet his uncle Charles to look for some of the money that House Stuart owed the Netherlands. So I think at that stage he's, what is he, 21? No, he's 20.
Jesus.
Sorry,
I'm. You know, the older you get, and it shouldn't surprise anyone, but the older you get, like you hear a number like 20. I'm only 27, but I hear that and like he's done a whole lot more in his life by the time of 20 than I have by 27.
Well, he was born a prince, and he's going over to visit Charles, his king uncle. Like,
well, yeah, like even from that, then Kev, like don't rub it in any further. Like, yeah, I'm still not a prince. Like, I'm still not a prince. He had that he came out hot. Like, he came out with that go-getter attitude straight away.
He's an orphan, I think, at this stage. So his father's dead before he's born.
Okay, so I've got that in him. I have a loving family.
His mum didn't like him too much. She didn't hang around. I think she died. She dies when he's like 10, I think. So he's not...
Mine's still alive.
It's not going well for him.
I'm killing it in that sense. Smashing it.
You got live parents. It's 2-0 for this man. So he goes over to visit his old Uncle Charles, looking for some of the money that they owe him. And earlier that same year, Charles II and Louis XIV of France had signed the Secret Treaty of Dover. I don't know if they called it the Secret Treaty. It was a secret. I feel like if you put secret in the title, it like arouses suspicion. But basically the treaty was that Charles was going to reveal that he was a Catholic and join forces with Louis, and then they'd defeat the Dutch outright. And then Charles would help his nephew, Billy, become stadholder.
He's going to reveal that he's a Catholic.
Yeah.
Is it the 17th century equivalent of a gender reveal party? Gather around all of your friends, bring everyone over for the party, and then do a curtain draw where you just reveal you're on your knees eating the body of Christ. They're like, oh, he's Catholic. What? Hey, congratulations.
I think it's just like a shock twist because he was outwardly Protestant the whole time, and all of his people were worried that he was a Catholic. I don't think he was technically at the time, but he did intend to convert to Catholicism at some point.
Okay.
So the plan was that he'd convert, shock everybody. Him and Louis would team up and just destroy the Netherlands. And then Charles would use his nephew, William, to like keep control of the Dutch. But when he actually met William, I don't know if this is the first time he met him, but he met him in 1670 and he found out that he was like a staunch Calvinist Protestant and probably wouldn't be into that sort of thing. And meanwhile, William wrote that he had similar disdain to his uncles Charles and James because all they were into was fucking their mistresses, drinking and gambling, and he wasn't into that sort of stuff.
The boring bastards.
Although he seemed to dislike them because they loved whoring around. But then later on I read he seemed to be proud of the fact that he only had one mistress. He seems to be pretty hard on them because they had several mistresses, and he's like, unlike me who only has one.
Yeah, but I mean that's respectable.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into... So this is the guy... So later on, like, Charles convinces James to marry his daughter off to William in order to, like, I don't know, assuage fears that he's going to turn England into a Catholic. So they all have to marry for political connections, you know? So he has to marry his cousin, basically, so that England and the Netherlands can be friends. So I guess it's fair enough if you also have someone on the side that you actually enjoy.
Do you mean like you need to have just one Gumar?
Yeah. Have you been watching The Sopranos again?
No, what I had to do there was I had to Google it because I was like, I'm going to get that confused with gabagool, which is the fake, that's the made-up type of cold cut meat that they have.
Is that made up?
Thing. Yeah, that's not a real thing. It's The Sopranos were famous for that notorious stuff. That they would just add in a bunch of stuff into the show, and then people would be like, oh yeah, that's Italian-American, that's a thing. That's not real.
I've been asking for gabagool for the last 4 years.
I know, yeah. Then you're always surprised when they spit in your face.
Jesus.
Yeah. No, that's there's a few things like that, but I think a Gumar is the actual.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, just everyone out there, have your one mistress.
You get one for political connections and then one for love.
But do you have a political connection mistress, or is
You
she?
get the political connection is your wife, and
Yeah.
the whole purpose of that relationship is to have a child so that countries won't go to war with each other.
Okay, fair enough. And then you have your Gumar on the side to keep you actually happy.
Yeah.
That's your love.
Yes, yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha.
So things all turn around for Billy in 1672. The French declare war on the Dutch, and the English row in behind them. William is made Captain General of the Dutch military forces at the age of 21. Again, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, like this is getting even tougher for me to take, Kev.
This is the time, the Golden Dutch period or whatever, like the Dutch are like running the seas, and now this 21-year-old guy is in charge of their military. He writes to his uncle Charles II looking for help to become stadholder and promises an allegiance with England against France afterwards, but Charles ignores him because he already has that plan with Louis. But so it proves to be a good year for William, but a very bad year for the Netherlands in general. It's later known as Rampjaar, or disaster year.
2020.
Yeah, maybe this is the first Rampjaar since 1672. So the Dutch army is beaten back pretty easily by the French and the English. Although their fleet is shit hot, it's not very effective on land, and they've been neglecting their army the whole time because they're just like, we'll deal with it on the sea.
They're the Aquaman of military tactics.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So with the enemies at the gate, the people turn against De Witt, and they appoint William to the position of stadholder in July. So the Netherlands is surrounded. The English send in an envoy to talk to William, who's now stadholder, and give him a treaty of peace. They say if he surrenders to the English, they'll promise to keep him on in like a puppet government kind of position.
Kermit or Miss Piggy?
He'll be the Miss Piggy of the Netherlands. He says no, and then the envoy gets annoyed and threatens William that he's going to witness the end of the Dutch Republic's existence. And William replies, there's only one way to avoid this, to die defending it in the last ditch. Which is a pretty good line.
So that he's going to duel him? Or they're just going to go to war?
He says, the guy is like, listen, if you keep down this path, you're going to witness the end of the Dutch Republic. And William's like, there's one way I won't see it, if I'm dead.
Yeah, he's like, that's what I've just said.
You're going to live to see this country fall. He's like, nope, I'll be dead. Which is pretty badass. It's the sort of cool line a 21-year-old would say, who's like the head of the military.
I think that's brilliant.
That is. I'll be honest, right? So all I knew about King Billy when I started this whole thing was like, he's the Protestant guy. The loyalists love him. He's actually, I kind of like him. He's pretty cool.
I think I'm on. Yeah, I think I like him now as well. he's getting into giant arguments like a child, but in a very noble sense.
But he is a child.
He's done. Is he? He's 21. He's 22 by now.
No, he's 21. I think he turns 22 that year. So they made a deal there where he's like the temporary. They made him temporary head of the military for the summer, and they said when he turned 22, he'd get the job permanently. So they gave him a summer internship as the head of the military.
He's doing his transition year work experience in the hope that he gets a job after.
But as far as I can see, they gave it to him like when England and France were about to attack. So they're like, all right, you can have it for the summer, and then September to October we'll get someone else in, and then when you turn 22 in November, it's yours if you don't fuck it up.
But he took it. He accepted this.
Oh, he did, yeah. Well, I mean, why not?
Yeah, he's pretty sure he's going to die anyway, so he doesn't seem to care.
No. But they managed to hold off the enemies by flooding parts of the Netherlands. So I guess they've got dams and stuff they can release, and keeping their enemies, or keeping the French and English armies at bay. At some point, there's an assassination attempt on Johan de Witt, who was like the political leader. He gets stabbed, and then William releases a letter from his uncle Charles saying that the only reason Britain's attacking is because of de Witt. Charles says it's his fault for some reason. So the pro-Orange mobs arrest Johan's brother Cornelius de Witt on like treason charges. They torture him, and then they sentence him to exile. And then when his brother Johan comes to pick him up to go into exile, a gang is waiting for them when they come outside the prison, and they lynch them and mutilate their bodies a bit just for good measure. Things go downhill for that guy pretty quickly. And I don't know why they hate him so much. Like, it seems like the Netherlands was going through a shit hot period, and then within the space of a couple of months, the two of them are fucked.
Yeah, but isn't that just, it's a precursor to modern media? What goes up must come down.
Yeah.
If people really like you, give it a few months because they'll get sick of liking you. And when you're sick of liking someone, it doesn't turn to abject nothingness. It turns to pure hatred.
But it really seems like they fucked these guys up. Like, there's an account, Alexander Dumas, who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo. I mean, he's French, and he wrote this a good while afterwards, so I don't know how serious you could take it. But he wrote a book called Black Tulip, which talks about this event. And according to him, like, the mob ripped the bodies to literal pieces and then sold bits of it on the street, and there was, minimal cannibalism involved. But
Wait, what do you mean there was minimal cannibalism?
well, they were selling them.
Yeah, I imagine they
eat.
were selling him, so it's not minimal. It was every single person was going home to commit the act of cannibalism.
Maybe they just wanted them as like trophies. I mean, they're not going to last, so
It couldn't have been further from minimal. It would have been maximum cannibalism.
It was maximum cannibalism.
They were cutting him up and selling him in the marketplace to make sure that they could use every single part of him.
Maximum cannibalism sounds like they'd be supporting the Immortal Seven at that gig.
That could be their debut album.
Yeah. So some say that William orchestrated the mob himself as revenge for DeWitt trying to keep him out of power. But, well, that's unclear. But what is known is that he didn't prosecute anyone that was involved in it. And in fact, he rewarded some of the ringleaders with money or positions of power.
But he definitely didn't organize it.
He definitely didn't organize it, but he did seem to stand by with his arms crossed and then throw bags of coins as they ate the bodies. So by the following year, William has managed to fight the French and English to a stalemate. I think the French take over the Maastricht region or something, but basically it's seen as a victory, and the Dutch think he's a great man altogether. So when the Immortal Seven come a-calling and write to William, the Dutch are on the brink of what would later be known as the 9 Years' War with France, and Billy was worried about another English-French Catholic alliance, and he was nervous that all he had from James II was a promise to stay neutral. So Billy had surrounded himself by, remember, all the people who'd left Ireland and England under Talbot and under James, all the Protestants who got spooked. A lot of them ended up in Holland. So he was kind of surrounded by them and Scottish and French Protestants who were all in exile. And they're all paranoid about a Catholic insurgence as well. Which wasn't completely unfounded because, so France is under Louis XIV at the time, who's the major power in Europe. In 1685, which is 3 years before the Immortal Seven write their letter, Louis had released the Edict of Fontainebleau, which revoked his grandfather's Edict of Nantes, which had allowed Protestant French Huguenots to, they'd given them substantial rights and lands in Catholic France. So he gets rid of that, which means it's now open season on Protestants. So about 200 to 400,000 leave the country all at once. A lot of them, again, are the wealthy industrial class. A lot of them are experienced military men. And a lot of them end up with, the first major Protestant power, I guess, outside of France is the Netherlands. So they go straight there. And a year after that, the French kill thousands of Waldensian Protestants. They lock up thousands more and force them to convert to Catholicism. A lot of them starve to death while they're not converting. And Louis is also pretty vocal about how he dislikes there's this prosperous Protestant nation right to the north of him. So Billy and the boys are paranoid, but it's not unfounded. So William was a leading member of various anti-French alliances. They'd all sort of end up becoming
So he was a member of Anti-Fra.
Yeah. They'd eventually become known as the League of Augsburg. So it was all the Germanic states, Austria, the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, Sweden, Portugal, all against France. I think the Ottomans were on the French side.
Oh, well, at least they had some good furniture then.
Yeah, exactly. They've got the furniture coming in from the east and then France in the west, and everything else in between is basically open territory. So England was supposed to be in that anti-French league as well, but William's now worried that James, being a Catholic, would just side with Louis and team up on them. Louis and James are also cousins, which is kind of relevant, but also sort of irrelevant because everyone's cousins. I think that would also mean that him and William are cousins. They're all related.
Yeah, it's don't say, yeah, Protestant or English nobility tends to be, what's the word, incestuous as feck.
But it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, where they just forced each other to marry each other in order to strengthen bonds between countries, which means that at any stage, it seems like your country's worst enemy could, within 2 or 3 generations, rule your country. You know what I mean?
That makes, yeah. It's weird. It's odd in that sense, but also looking back through the family lineage of some Protestants or English nobilities, kind of like reading the titles as you scroll down through the home screen on Pornhub. You're like, it's going to get very incestuous very quickly.
Yeah. But so now William's got his letter. That's all he wanted. So in November, he lands his army of about 18,000 troops on 250 ships at Torbay. And straight away, British nobility starts siding with him, which is not what James wants. So Louis offers to help his cousin James, but James refuses the French help because he figures that'll lose him support at home. It's exactly what everyone's worried about, that he's trying to set up a Catholic dynasty. So if he takes help from France, his own people will revolt. They already seem to be revolting at this stage, so I don't really know what he's worried about. But he also couldn't get help from Pope Innocent, because the Pope was against.
Oh, he was definitely a paedophile.
Oh, 100%.
Pope, I don't even particularly like kids. It's like, he couldn't. It'd be 2 on the money. This would be 2 on the money.
Pope. Well, he's Pope Innocent the 11th. So the rest of them, I imagine, all got arrested, and he's like, yeah, well, this time for real.
If it ain't Pope, don't fix it.
Yep. He starts running a Pope cast from jail, his Pope podcast, talking about how he was framed. Changed his name from Pope Innocent to Pope Setup the 4th. But so in another like interesting twist from modern times, the Pope didn't support him because he was against Louis' warmongering. He was against France's warmongering in Europe. Even though like France and now England are like the main Catholic forces in Europe, the Pope sides with Protestant William. There's also, I read a few things written in more recent times saying that the Pope's family bank actually funded the Protestant side, which I don't know how, I think that bit is true, but the fact that the Pope's family bank kind of funded everybody. So the fact that he was sending money to William mightn't have been that big of a deal.
Yeah, I suppose if they're just giving out the money. Well, what's his family? Why is he a rich pope? What's going on?
Yeah, they're all rich. Well, it was like during it, like they're just one of the rich Italian families.
And then they just decided they could talk to God.
Well, I think it's more a fact that it's like, let's get our rich family members into positions of power. Well, why not be the pope? Yeah, he was born Benedetto Odescalchi. So the Odescalchi family, I guess, were big. One of the big bankers.
Great grandson fucked Ireland.
Yeah, I think it's the same Scalacci.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
This
that's what this story is actually about.
Yes,
you've tricked me. You're going to do a sports podcast. We're going to do Italia 90.
Well, I'll throw you a sports fact. It was my parents' 30th wedding anniversary there last weekend, and
I remember that because you said it. You were going home for a 30th anniversary, and I was like, Kevin's lied to me all these years. He's not just a year older than I am. He's 30, and this is odd.
And for some reason, I decided to call it a 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
But so 30 years ago was Italian 90. So I was looking up like the fixtures. 3 or 4 days before the wedding, Czechoslovakia was playing against West Germany, which is a sign of how long they've been married. The big football fixture was 2 countries that don't exist anymore.
Yeah, that is actually pretty phenomenal.
It's weird, yeah. So there you go. So West Germany beat England the night before the wedding.
Oh, so a lot of ropey heads the next day.
Yes, but then also Ireland, Scalacci Italy had knocked Ireland out a week before that.
But sure, look, we were just happy to be there.
We were happy to be along.
In the English net, Ray Houghton.
I
think that was Italia 90. I wasn't born yet.
Yeah. So yeah, but again, that's all kind of weird that like in modern times, during the Orange Order parades, they're fans of burning effigies of the Pope. But back in the actual 1680s, the Pope was on William's side and possibly was bankrolling him. Because because he was against like Louis' warmongering, and also because James was appointing his own cardinals, which apparently the Pope was only supposed to do, which doesn't really make any sense because, I don't know, if you think about trying to get anything done, if you had to send a messenger from 1680s England to 1680s Italy every time he wanted to appoint a cardinal. Nothing would get done.
Probably not.
So James took it into his own hand, and the Pope was not happy about that.
Carrier pigeons? Is that not an option?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know you're a fan of them, but I don't know if they can fly from London to the Vatican.
Lazy.
So, yeah, so William lands with 18,000 troops. People start flocking over to him. James tries to rally his own troops, but the Tories wouldn't deal with him because he kept trying to remove the test laws so the Catholics could live in the country. So he took his main force of 19,000 troops and went to meet William in Salisbury. But it became apparent that his own troops weren't that keen to fight for him. After the initial fight, I think the total body count is about 15 people. And then at that stage, officers start deserting James. We've rallied together to fight for our country against an invading force. I'm here for blood. Wait, 15 people have died. I'm out. I'm done. It's a lost cause.
Here's the thing. I was 100% behind you when I didn't think this was going to be any kind of confrontation whatsoever.
So, on the 24th of November...
Is that the equivalent of, like, if you go and start on someone who's way bigger than you because you know you have a bunch of friends behind you that are massive, and then you're like, yeah, go on, say it again, poking them in the chest, and then you turn around and your friends are just gone to get chips or talking to women, and you're like,
sure.
This is going to end badly.
Well, they're equal forces, and I suppose James would have rightly thought, my countrymen will rally behind me against this invading force, but he was wrong because he was Catholic. On the 24th of November, a load of his main commanders go over to William's side, including one John Churchill. So there's a name.
A relation to...
Yeah, I think he's great. I don't know how many greats is in there, but yeah, is one of his relatives.
Well, I'll put it like this, Kev. No greats. There's no great Churchills.
It's funny how, like, that's Cromwells have shown up. Like, these dynasty families, like the Churchills, or there's a few Churchill people in this that I left out. The Talbots. Like, the conflict between Talbot and Butler was hard to research because it was an exact same conflict in the 1600s and the 1400s between Talbots and Butlers, all with the same names, but, like, completely unrelated to each other. It's just the same names fighting with each other hundreds of years apart.
It's good to know that they keep it up, like, throughout the lineage.
I don't even know if they do it on purpose or there's just something in their blood.
It's just part of the prophecy.
Yeah. So 2 days later, on the 26th of November, James's daughter Anne goes over to William. She's also suspicious about James's kid being an imposter. I think maybe because her odds of being queen goes up if it passes to William. But basically, like, everyone's abandoning him. William advances through England pretty much unstopped. There's Catholic riots all around the country, riots against Catholics, which, again, there aren't that many of, so I think people are just rioting at the idea of Catholics.
Is it just rioting, or has it turned to looting at this stage?
I don't know what really they can loot. There's no equivalent of going to Target and stealing a TV screen. There's nothing to get.
You get some bread.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought as well. There's bread.
Might be able to get a cow.
They might have just been looting bread. There's probably no cows in the city.
Not the city I lived. Carlow's not a city.
So,
in fairness, there's horses in the city in Dublin.
That's true.
And all around Texas. So
that's true.
You could rob a horse,
yeah.
Which also is probably the best. It's like robbing a car. Your getaway vehicle is the possession you've stolen.
It's foolproof.
It's like you could rob a surfboard, but you're stuck in terms of the direction you're going to go.
Unless you rob it at the beach, then you're laughing.
Yeah, but then you've got to just come back to shore, and the person can wait. You're like, I am going to have to go to England with this.
So on the 9th of December, James's forces are defeated at Reading, and after that, his wife and his son escape into exile to France. And James is going to join them the next day on the 10th. But before he goes, this is my favourite part, I think, of this whole story. Before he goes, he throws the Great Seal into the Thames River because Parliament can't be summoned without the seal. So it's just a stamp that they have to put on forms. But because England is so rigid to tradition, he thinks if he throws it in the river, they can't execute him because they won't be able to form Parliament.
I hope it worked for at least a while.
It does. They have to make another one. They were like... So he's like, well, if they catch me, they won't be able to execute me because there'll be no official parliament, and they have to wait until another one is made.
Genius.
It is. It's pretty good. So it's gone, but he gets captured by some fishermen while he's trying to escape. On the night of the 11th, there's mass looting of Catholic nobles' houses, embassies of the Catholic
They're
countries.
robbing the churches.
They are, well, like the Catholic gentry in England. Why I don't know why they're still there, but their houses get robbed. Embassies of the Catholic countries get robbed. But then the next day, I think they all wake up with like a collective guilt hangover, and there's a mass panic across the country that they believe the Irish army is going to come attack London. So again, like William's forces is about 19,000, and there's at least, I think, 5,000 Irish soldiers in England at this stage that have come over from Talbot. So people are freaked out that they're just going to like now run amok and take over the country. There's all these rumors happening that like the next town over just got taken over by the Irish and we're next. And people across 19 cities come out to like defend their cities. Apparently 100,000 people come out to protect London, which is way more people than went to protect the entire country. So I think James could get about 19,000 people. Allegedly 100,000 came out to protect the city of London.
I mean, it's a good city.
It is. It's a good city as long as there's no Catholics in it.
As true today as it was back then.
Yes. On the 18th, William rocks into London. Everyone's delighted to see him and meets with James shortly after. He doesn't know what to do with James. He doesn't want to kill him. He doesn't want to put him in prison because he's his wife's father and also his cousin or his uncle. He's his uncle and his father-in-law. So it'd be embarrassing if he had to execute him. So he sends him with some guards to Kent, right by the sea. And then I think he basically just tells the guards to stand with their backs to him and leave the prison door open. But he escapes.
Shocker.
I don't really know what the plan is. He's just like, take him. Kent is where he tried to escape from beforehand. So they're like, take him back there and put him in a cardboard box and see what happens. So on the 23rd of December, James escapes off to France and meets up with his wife. So it's his second time in exile in his life. Meanwhile, William orders all the British troops out of London and comes in with his own boys, and everyone claps and cheers and wears orange.
And such is the beginning.
Yes.
And is that the first ever?
It might be the first ever in
like wearing of a collaborative all wearing like a orange.
Yeah.
They didn't march, did they?
They didn't march, but I guess I'm sure it would have been a thing in the Netherlands. So it's probably the first of its kind in the UK.
No, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm throughout all of this, from the second you started talking about it, I've always just wanted to keep yelling. So that's where the Orange Order. Now it's the point of the. Like, I know that's where it's going eventually, and yes. I just keep butting in, going like, and that's the Orange Order. You're like, yeah, we've been through this. This story's about that. You're like, I'm a genius.
It's from the start that this is about the Orange Order. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. This is like each one of these bits is a sort of key point of history for the Orange Order. I thought you were going to say, I've been waiting since the start of the story to yell, this is an Irish history podcast, not a Dutch and British history podcast. And you're right. So here at probably, I'd say, the 3-hour mark in total, we're going to Ireland.
Hey.
Of the 3 kingdoms of Ireland, England and Scotland, Ireland was the only one with a majority Catholic population. It's kind of hard to get numbers around this time, but I think the population of Ireland was around 1 million compared to 5 million in England at the time. So there's not that big of a disparity, like compared to nowadays.
Yeah, because now that would be the equivalent now of like, so that'd be like if England was only 20 million people instead of 60.
Yeah, but of the 1 million in Ireland, about 4/5 of them were Catholic, and of the other 5th Protestants, 2/3 of them were non-conformists, which basically just means anything that isn't Church of England, and only 1/3 of that was Church of England or like Anglican. The Protestant 5th in the country was made up of like English and Scottish plantation settlers, and most of them were based in Ulster.
That does make sense.
Things have been pretty shit for Catholics for a while in the country. After Cromwell, the Catholic upper class lost all their land. Catholics couldn't hold public office, they couldn't practice their religion, they couldn't sit in Irish Parliament. But when James was on the throne, things started to turn around. Old fighting Dick Talbot was in charge, and once the penal and test laws were repealed, in the space, as we were talking about earlier on, like in the space of 18 months, Catholics took over the army, public offices, the judiciary system. They were back on top. And Talbot was working on getting a Catholic majority in the Parliament so that he could repeal the Restoration land settlements and basically give land back to the Catholic gentry. But when it became obvious that William was going to attack England, Talbot rallied the Irish to declare for James and get ready for war. They were known as the Jacobites, or the Jacobites, derived from Jacobus, the Latin for James.
See, and now I'm learning things, because that's something I've heard of, and I've done bits and pieces, but now you're going to actually inform me.
There you go. Well, so yeah, the Jacobites, they come up a lot. I think it just becomes a term for anyone who supports the Stuart lineage after this. But and I don't know if these are the first Jacobites. There's also Jacobites in Scotland who declare for James as well. But since Talbot had sent about 40% of the Irish army to England to fight with James, he ordered 4 new regiments to be made, one from each province. In the Ulster province, Alexander MacDonald hired about 1,200 to 1,600 Scottish militiamen called the Redshanks to do for his army. One of the few Protestant regiments left in the Irish army was in Derry/Londonderry. I feel like I can't call it Londonderry, yet for the entirety of the rest of the story, it is Londonderry, like if ever there was a time for it to be relevant.
Would you want me to give you carte blanche? You want me to give you the leeway to say, Kevin, for the rest of this episode, it's okay if you want to call it Londonderry?
No, every time, like at the start when I was writing out the story, I was like, I'll just call it Derry. And the more I read about it, like, you know, in modern day Derry, it's predominantly Catholic. They all want it to be Derry. It's Derry. But back then, it's like a Protestant stronghold. They called it Londonderry. And you'll see by the end of this story, they go through some shit. And I don't know. I still can't do it. I'll just call it Londonderry/Derry.
Every time?
Every time.
Okay.
So it's one of the only Protestant...
Turncoat.
Yeah. So it's one of the only Protestant regiments left in the country. And Talbot didn't trust them. Talbot didn't want a Protestant city with a Protestant garrison to be there, just in case they hadn't kicked off. So in November, he gets Mountjoy to leave Derry with his regiment, and he wants MacDonald's regiment to replace them, who, it just seems like it was like 1,000 Scottish men that he randomly hired. So I don't know why he thought that'd be any better than a Protestant garrison. But they take a while getting ready. I don't know why he asked the other guys to leave, and then the MacDonald's regiment wasn't ready to go. They were still tying up their boots or whatever. So by the time they actually start marching towards Derry, they bump into a previous governor of Derry along the way, Colonel George Phillips, and he chats away to them, and he's like, "Where are you going, lads?" And they're like, "Oh, we're going to go garrison in Derry/Londonderry." And he's like, "Oh, okay, cool, no worries, yeah." And then slyly, he sends a message to Derry saying that these Catholic troops are on the way.
Nice.
Because tensions are high in the north with all the stuff that's happening in England. They're high in the north anyway, at all times. I think that's a fair assessment to say. At all times in Irish history, tensions are high in the north. But it was exacerbated when a letter was found at the start of December in a village called Coomber, and the letter was addressed to a Protestant lord there, warning him of an impending massacre that was going to happen on the 9th of December. And like, I read the letter, and it's basically like, "Hello, my old friend the Lord. I would like to warn you of an incoming massacre. You've always been a nice fellow. On the 9th of December, we shall kill every man, woman, and child." So, everyone nowadays says it was definitely a hoax. It was also just some random letter that someone found on the ground in a small village. But it got copied and sent all over the place, and the Protestants thought it meant that there was going to be a massacre of all the Protestants in Ulster.
Okay, is this like a message in a bottle type situation?
How do you mean?
Because they just find a piece of paper. This could be... I don't know whether to believe people who are, when they find those messages that in bottles that wash up on beaches.
Oh, sure.
Because they're not actually people who are on shipwrecked islands who send that out there. They don't have pens and paper and bottles to be thrown away. It's me going down writing fake "I'm lost on an island" messages and then just throwing them onto the beach everywhere I go. And I, from a distance, look at people and go, and then I just walk away in the knowledge that it'll probably take them an hour to figure that out.
Well, yeah, it's similar enough in this. Whoever wrote that letter ended up inciting a whole load of shit in Ulster. But, so the letter gets sent around. One copy is sent to Derry, Enniskillen, all over the place. People point to it as proof that there's going to be a Catholic insurrection and they're going to kill all the Protestants. One of the copies is sent to Talbot, and he's like, it's a fabrication. This is nonsense. Nothing's going to happen to you. But his name is Lying Dick Talbot, so they figure it's proof that it's true. For some reason, after he says it's a lie, they're like, well, that seals the deal.
Well, if you check the date, you'll realise it is in fact opposite day.
Yes. Lying Dick Talbot says it's not true, which means...
Therefore, it's concrete.
Yeah. So on the 7th of December, MacDonald's garrison is about to cross over the River Foyle and head into Derry and, re-up the defences of the city. But the people of Derry had been warned that he was coming, and they're sort of deliberating, what are they going to do? There's this letter in the air. People are like, they could be coming to kill us all. Other people are saying it's probably grand. It's just the army. And while all that's going on, 13 boys, later known as the Apprentice Boys, stole the keys of the city and just locked the gate.
I love that name.
The Apprentice Boys.
The Apprentice Boys.
Yes. Well, the Apprentice Boys basically make Derry's decision for them. They lock the gate, effectively declaring for King William, which at the time, James hadn't been defeated yet. He was still the king, so it is an open act of rebellion. But MacDonald didn't have the power to actually take over the city, so they just had to stand there and take it.
Fair.
2 days later, old Colonel Phillips, who blew the whistle on them, he shows up and he's led into the city and he takes over as de facto governor.
And he was the world's first ever whistleblower.
Yeah. He was, or a tout, as they would call him now. But, so Talbot hears about what happens in Londonderry/Derry. And he sends word to Mountjoy to stop marching towards Dublin, to turn around and go and help take back Derry/Londonderry. So on the 21st of December, he shows up and they make a deal with the people inside the city. The 2 Protestant garrisons are allowed to enter, one led by Robert Lundy and the other by William Stewart. And then Mountjoy appoints Lundy as the governor of Derry/the governor of Londonderry. The London governor.
Londonderry.
Well, we'll get into it later on, but they wouldn't like that. Lundy, they have issues with him. But so Enniskillen in Fermanagh is in a similar boat. They're freaked out by the rumours of Catholic massacre. And the same thing, it's pretty much the same thing. There's a garrison of troops coming to reinforce the town, and they decide to lock them out. On the 15th of December, they had fixed up the defences, kicked all the Catholics out of the town, and brought in Protestants from all around the countryside. And they'd elected a new governor as well, Gustav Hamilton.
Fantastic name. Also, they're very efficient, the Protestants.
They are.
Like,
yes.
That's why it took us so long to get the country back. Because, I mean, we were not. And they were very much so on the ball.
They were. So in the space of a couple of days, so now Derry and Enniskillen, they've become havens for Protestants. I don't know if they're the only 2, but they're the 2 main outliers in Ireland at the time. Because of Talbot, the rest of Ireland is now run by Catholics. The whole country is primed for James's return. The only place holding out are Derry and Enniskillen. And as you said, they've in the space of a couple of days, done up the whole city, doubled down on the offences, elected new governors. They're ready to roll.
Yeah, well, that's, as the old saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day because of the lazy Catholics.
Yeah. They should have brought over a couple of Derry boys.
It was a half a day kind of job, and we stretched it out to a week.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, that pillar won't go up overnight. That's that'll need parts.
Sure, I can't work. I'm waiting on materials.
You get me the materials and I'll work. That's why Newgrange took so long. Do you ever see Newgrange? There's stones from all around the country. There's stones there in front of you, but you're not build. Not at all. I need Wicklow stones.
They're not the right stones.
We got you Wicklow stones last week. Oh, did I say Wicklow? I meant Fermanagh. Get me some shale from Fermanagh.
What's
and a slabber rock from Tipperary there.
Give me 2 slabs from Tiernan Oaks.
I suppose, yeah. Do you want me to put any rock up? No. Get me some pebbles from Kerry.
Fair play to them though. It still looks good.
It still does. It still does. Yep.
It holds up. Test the time. Yeah. Fairness to it.
Did you see that thing recently where they used DNA evidence to prove that the people that were buried in the crypt there are related?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that was big news there a few weeks ago. So it turns out, much like in this story, where there's just all this intermarrying and incest between the different royalties, it turns out we were at it as well.
Yeah, it's the same thing as with the English invading a bunch of countries and being dickheads for the most part. It's not the English, it's people. It's human nature. That's just what happens. It's just that if you become incredibly successful at it, then the world hates you.
Yeah.
You've gotten too good at it. No, you're not allowed. That's all it is.
It's just begrudgery. But so in February of the following year, 1689, Mary and William are declared joint monarchs of England, Scotland, and Ireland, and they're declared by the Parliament. So this whole event is known as the Glorious Revolution, where William came up and got rid of the Catholic James. Billy established a parliamentary democracy, and they signed in, just like you were saying earlier on, they signed in a new Bill of Rights in 1689, which declared that no future king could be Catholic or be married to a Catholic, and basically also took away a lot of power from the monarch and gave it to the Parliament.
Okay.
According to Thomas Davies, families like the Danbys, the Shaftesburys, and the Churchills had basically just made a deal with William to come over, kick James off. He could have the monarchy, but that they would do the actual ruling from the Parliament. So again, like it's seen as this sort of like Catholic Protestant thing, but in reality, it seems more like William just wanted England to be a sure thing so that he could get on with his battle with France in the rest of Europe. He didn't want the British to align with France. So he didn't really care about the going-ons of the Parliament. He didn't really care about the inner politics of what was happening there. The Parliament didn't like the fact that James kept trying to like get rid of the laws they'd put in place because he just wanted equal rights for Catholics because he was a Catholic. So they were sick of that shit. So it seems like they just reached out to someone, got him to come over with a claim, got rid of James, took all the power away from the monarchy so they could get on with business and just give the figurehead away to William.
Okay. Well, when you put it like that, bastards.
A fairly glorious revolution. So once again, Jason, it's not about religion, it's all about class.
Class.
So now that like William's officially won, Derry and Enniskillen are now in the right, but also
Derry/Londonderry.
Derry/Londonderry and Enniskillen/London Enniskillen are now technically correct. They are now loyal to the king, but they're also in the vast minority in the country. So the rest of the country is riled up and ready to fight for James. It doesn't matter that James lost very quickly, and all of a sudden, I think they're just about getting ready to fight, and it turns out James has already lost. They're ready to go. So
they're already there. They're already ready to go. They're not going to turn around now, Kev. This again harkens back to the idea of you're going to Prague to see a Salvador Dali exhibition, right? The Salvador Dali exhibition's been cancelled. Are you the type of man who's going to go home, or are you going to just take it on the chin / up the nose, and you're just going to enjoy Prague for what it is? Like you got to make your call. It's like it's black and white. Are you a man or are you a mouse?
And then I guess there's also what we talked about earlier. There's the idea that France had floated the idea to Talbot of him becoming King of Ireland if ever, everything's kicked off there. Maybe he's thinking, this is my chance. Why back down now? Everyone's rallied up and ready to fight. So you get instances like in Bandon in Cork, which is a majority Protestant town in the south. I didn't know this. Did you know this?
I did not know that. I assumed everywhere in Cork was very pro-Catholic.
Yeah, well, this is a Protestant town. Captain Dan O'Neill decided to remain loyal to James, and he tells all the Protestants to hand over their weapons in the next 72 hours. But the townspeople, they know that William's the king, so they know they've got a good chance of winning this thing. They tell O'Neill to feck off. He calls over the local leader of the military, Lord Clancarty. He's due to arrive on the 24th of February to bolster the defences, but the people decide to revolt. They ring a town bell. Everyone hops out of their beds early on a Monday morning, grab the weapons off O'Neill's men, and kick them out of town. One of the things that kept them going was the rumour that O'Neill was going to say Catholic Mass in the Protestant cathedral. I know.
No.
That's enough to incentivise men to get up early on a Monday morning. So apparently after this, Bandon was known as Southern Derry for a while. And also, apparently, this is where this claims to be the origins of the phrase "no surrender." Apparently, it was written on banners and hung off walls.
Are you sure, or are you this?
No, we'll see, because, right, then the next part of the story, Derry is similar, and I'd read that it was the origins of the phrase "no surrender." I think it's kind of I remember driving around Bristol, which is where J.K. Rowling is from, and every cafe has a sign in the window being "This is where Harry Potter and the thing was." Everyone wants to claim ownership of that lovely phrase, "no surrender."
If you're in Bristol and just there's any street art or people are spray painting or tagging anything, they go, that's actually Banksy. That's Banksy. Yeah. They're like, really? That penis that says "for a good time call whatever number," that's Banksy.
If you ring that number, Banksy will answer.
He exclusively writes on the inside of bathroom stalls now. That's exactly what Banksy does.
But unfortunately for the people of Bandon and their revolution, the Lieutenant General of Ireland, Justin McCarthy, was in Cork at the time, so he headed out and took back over the city. They rounded up the 10 ringleaders and executed them, but instead of attacking the rest of the town and tearing it down, they just fined the town 1,500 and let everyone go, which seemed apparently was a very lax punishment at the time.
Yeah, it's a bit of a slap on the wrist, considering
it's open insurrection. But
do you mean then that so they just pretty much gave up the fight pretty quickly? Are you going to say that they abandoned the insurrection?
This is actually the origins of the phrase abandoned, but so I think McCarthy was trying to say it's not going to be like the other times when there was a Catholic uprising. We're not just going to kill Protestants left, right, and centre. We'll just kill these 10, and it's a 1,500 fine, and don't do it again. If you do it twice, it's community service.
Progress. Yeah, that's progress.
So the whole time since James had summoned troops over to England, Talbot's just been flat out recruiting men, training men, getting them ready to fight. So he's got a pretty good standing army waiting for James to come over. And on the 8th of March, Talbot sent Richard Hamilton with 2,500 men to take back Ulster. Hamilton had been one of the men who'd fought in England for James, and he'd been taken prisoner and then sent by William back to Ireland to negotiate with Talbot. But as soon as he got back to Ireland, he just defected and joined back up with Talbot again. I think he'd been sent back with men as well. And he's you go negotiate with him, and then immediately just went back to his other side.
I like his style.
It's a good style.
He's a turncoat, but in fairness, it's a very fashionable coat.
It's a nice coat. So on the 14th of March, Hamilton defeated the Army of the North at the Break of Dromore. So I think that's a pretty short battle. The Army of the North was a Protestant force raised in opposition to the Royal Irish Army, which was predominantly Catholic at this time. It was set up pretty quickly, but it was sanctioned by William, and it was led, or one of the leaders of the army was Sir Arthur Rawdon, nicknamed Cock of the North. So Hamilton defeats Rawdon and the Army of the North, and then goes on to meet up with MacDonald outside Derry/Londonderry, and they begin the siege of Londonderry/Derry on the 18th of April. So meanwhile, in France, James is back in exile, and he meets up with his cousin Louis XIV. Louis figured if James could regain the throne in England, that'd be a major ally for him in the wars in Europe, and even if he failed, it would distract William and take his attention away from Europe so that he could, again, do what he wanted. I think at the time he was about to invade the Rhineland, or he had just invaded the Rhineland, so he figured if he helped out James, best case scenario, England's on his side. Worst case scenario, William has to waste time fighting in Ireland.
Not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. So in March 1689, James sets off to Ireland with Louis' backing to go and take back his throne. And I think that is the end of the prologue. That's 2 episodes of scene setting. Now here we go.
That's the background.
That's the background. The Protestants have taken over Derry and Enniskillen. William is in charge of England after a pretty decisive victory. James is about to land in Ireland with France's backing. It's all about to kick off. The next bit is
where's Khaleesi? And have the timelines synced up yet?
When I was reading a lot of this, I read a lot of comparisons between James and Stannis. He's the one who's technically correct and very obedient to the laws and fairness and justice, but is also very unlikable.
He doesn't have that the joie de
He doesn't have the jeu de, although he does in this case have that je ne sais quoi from Louis in France.
Fair.
And he's also in exile and annoyed about the fact that he has to be in exile, and he loves his country. But also, as we'll see next week or in the next episode, unlike Stannis, who's a excellent general and military technician, James is an idiot.
I'm looking forward to the next. I'm going to have to, much like the listeners, re-listen to these 2 episodes before you even try to tell me about the next. Because this is we're halfway through this story.
We're halfway through. We're just about to start. So the next phase is called An Cuga na Doria, or the War of the Two Kings. So this is like William and James. This is the fight. This is what the Orange Order is all about. This is what the Battle of the Boyne comes in.
You've got us up to Helm's Deep now.
Got us. Yes.
Yeah, but instead of blowing your load and giving us like a big finish to the second film, what you're going to do is hold off and then come out with a bang at the start of the third.
Pretty much, yeah. So the scene has been set. Interesting things to note so far. The Pope is on the Protestant side. This battle is not so much really about Ireland as it is just a way for like Louis and William to duke it out over Europe. Like the 9 Years' War, it's all really about stopping Louis taking over Europe, and Ireland is just like a playing field for. Basically, it's just to distract William from the rest of the fight.
Okay, well, it's nice to know that we're being used for something important.
It is, and it's also crazy how close like Talbot seemed to be running a Catholic Ireland or becoming possibly King of Ireland. But
interesting.
Yep.
How our country could have differed or changed, or he would have just been murdered pretty quickly.
Yes, yeah. But well, that's it, right? So we'll leave it there until the next episode.
Okay, well, we'll see you all next week.
Good luck.
Right, Shafter. Good luck.
See ya.